So I'm Joe.
And I'm also Joe.
We run the Good Chance Theatre in Calais, which is in the migrant camp, or the refugee camp, and is home to about 6,000 people, we think, at the moment.
Yeah, we run basically a cultural space for the people who live there, and it's been up and running now for 4 months. We first visited Calais in August last year, when there was the news and the TVs and the newspapers were absolutely full of pictures, all these harrowing, terrifying pictures of, thousands of people walking along the railways in Hungary, crossing the Aegean Sea, arriving in Greece, just tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, 1 million people leaving their homes, leaving their countries, and with it, everything that makes you a human being, your house, your family in a lot of cases, your car, your favourite possessions, your bed, your clothes, and they were leaving, and many of them were arriving in France with the hope of getting to England. And we're playwrights, so we write about the world around us and the people around us, and we felt we had to go, maybe not to write a play, but just to find out what was going on and see for ourselves, actually, the stuff we were reading in the newspapers. What did it look like in reality? Who are these people that we were seeing these pixelated photographs of? So we drove the car across the channel, arrived in Calais with half a mind to go on to Munich in Germany, where the story was really hot at that time, and actually discovered there this extraordinary place, sort of a horrible place. 6,000 people living in very basic tents.
It's disgusting, yeah.
No sanitation, disease, lots of coughing, but at the same time, a sense of community, a sense of shared hope and optimism and creativity, a need to tell stories and to sing together, and we were so struck by that we thought we could actually go there and build a space where people could tell their own stories, a theatre where people could stage their own plays or paint their own pictures or read or write together, and that's what we did 4 months ago. And since then, it's really taken off, and people really respect that space.
I think the important thing is that people needed to talk, and we went actually in the first place just to listen, because people carry with them and are their stories, and there is such a need to just talk as a way of ordering your brain in amongst the mess of the situations that you have to deal with. And so we just went to listen, and we took away the idea that maybe we could create somewhere where we could always listen in an ongoing way. And
that was the idea, a place for listening, because we realised that actually that's one thing that wasn't happening. We weren't listening,
weirdly,
to the people involved in this global crisis. We thought it was all very confusing. It was difficult to understand why these people were moving, why they wanted to come to Britain, why they wanted to go to Germany, what was going on. And what we weren't doing was actually just listening and saying, hey, my name's Joe, what's your name? And
it's true, we were hearing a lot from politicians and a lot from media outlets, but we personally hadn't heard from the people who were being spoken about. So what do? You go and you talk, and that's the only way. We've not found a better way of getting stories than just by talking yet. So that's what we did, and I don't know, it's possibly a surprising place for a theatre to exist, because it is a very, very difficult place to live. People are still living in tents. It's the middle of winter now. About half of those people have been able to build prefabricated houses because various associations, Auberge des Migrants, Médecins Sans Frontières, and other charities have worked to be able to give the materials for people to function in a very basic way. But still, loads of people who are just living in tents, and so perhaps, I don't know, you'd ask the question, well, should a theatre be there when people don't have shelter, they don't have food in a constant manner? And actually, so far, the answer has been yes, because we all need to talk.
Yeah, and there are so many words that surrounding it, refugee, asylum seeker, migrant,
immigrant,
economic migrant, immigrant, all these words, and we're the same. We realised how little we actually knew, you know, what those words meant, and what they all describe is just people. People who, for a whole variety of reasons, have had to leave where they came from. And in the people we've met, over 20 nationalities live in the jungle. So people from, not just from Syria, which we always hear about on the news, but Afghanistan, Iran, Egypt, Kurdistan,
Iraq,
Kuwait, Iraq, Sudan, Chad, Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia. Maddening. And you talk to each of these communities and find that the reasons are slightly different. Maybe they don't like the way their government is running the country, and they've spoken out, and that has meant that they're in danger of their life, because they don't have that freedom that we take for granted here. You know, the freedom just to say, I don't like the way this is going, or there's terrible famine in a country, there's nothing to eat, or no jobs whatsoever. You know, and the option you have is living on the streets with nothing, or moving, or moving out of your country and finding somewhere where you can have a chance to live and to learn in a school and get a job and create a life and a family.
And some of the Kuwaitis, the Badoon people who aren't allowed to work, they are denied citizenship in Kuwait, and so what do you do in that situation? And then there are the people who, you know, we are watching these stories. They are people who have been victims in some way of Daesh or the Taliban, and they have been persecuted in a physical sense, or their families have been persecuted in a physical sense, and they have had to run for their lives. And so you're right, there's a whole range of reasons for why people are in this situation, all of them legitimate in their own ways.
All of them very scary.
Really scary.
You know, I had no idea, I realise now. I really didn't have an idea. And we just went, like we said, and listened and talked and got to know people, and what we've learned has given us, I think, I've learned to listen more now. I empathise more. I try and put myself in other people's shoes, I think.
Yeah.
You know, if I had to leave my home, you know, what would I take with me? What would I leave behind? Where would I go? Where would I consider as a safe place to go? And even beginning to think about it is just impossible. How could I leave, London or Hull, where I'm from? How could I do that? So,
and I think also as well, what we've probably gained is the hope and the understanding that actually it's not that difficult to listen. There's a lot of noise and stuff in the world, a lot of different articles that are written about so many different things in television, but if you want to, you can go to listen. We still have that option. It's not been taken away from us, and that it's really quite easy to do that.
Yeah.
You can make that decision, and then when you go with it, it's quite easy to do, because it's just like being at home, but you're talking with a different kind of person who is a person.
And you know, part of that noise that you talk about, you know, we were really worried when we went. Our mum and dad were like, "Please don't go. It's really unsafe. Like it's gonna, you know." And it's not it's not like walking on a street in London. It's not like walking on a street in a UK city. There are dangers, but by and large, it's harmonious. You know, all these nationalities living in such a small space in such difficult conditions, and yet people are friendly, people are warm. They'll invite you in for a cup of tea, they'll invite you in for food if they see you passing. People want to talk and they want to get to know you as much as you want to get to know them. Yeah. That was what really stuck with us.
That's true. People asking us what our stories are.
How are you today? How am I? I mean, how am I? I suppose I'm okay.
I'm alright, yeah.
I'm alright.
Okay, I think.
There was that moment you said, how did we, because we would walk through the camp and we were a little bit like, fuck. I didn't swear then, I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, you know. And then we took the plunge and we just went up to somebody and said, "Hey, I'm Joe, and we smiled. And it's that smile. You realise you can just smile.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're in a conversation in broken English, so you're trying to communicate, you're trying to find out what each other's saying. But in that is the joy of actually trying to come to some kind of understanding.
I think as well the reality to us it seems is that this is a situation of many different people who are having to seek refuge that is going to continue for a long time, for our generation at least, and that we really have to get used to the idea of chatting and of being a little bit more open than we perhaps naturally are, going up to people and listening for maybe an extra 2-3 minutes, not speaking ourselves, just listening, taking in what another person is saying. And if we can do that, it will take us a really long way. Obviously, the idea of art is to listen in some way, and that's why we believe in theatre and art more broadly, is because it forces empathy upon individuals. So we believe it has a really important function as we move into what is, like you said, it's going to be, or it seems on the face of it, quite scary. If we go a little bit further, it won't be quite so scary, or at least not in the same way that we thought.
It's always just people.
People trying to live.